Julian Mercer didn't think his day could get stranger. He had just finished washing his daughter, Ellie's favorite teddy bear, when a golden envelope appeared on his screen. It was pulsing with light. Not a regular message, not even a high security one. This was a royal summons and not from Earth. The message began with a soft chime and a voice like silk. Julian Mercer, Earth-born xenopsychologist, single father, you are summoned to the Kaetheran royal ship Starless. Purpose: emergency emotional consultation. Reward: to be negotiated in person by Her Royal Majesty Queen Erlani. Julian blinked. Then he read it again and again. Ellie, he whispered, turning to his 2-year-old daughter who was trying to feed her teddy bear a cookie. Daddy might be getting a job. A big one. She giggled and dropped the cookie. The bear was clearly not interested. 3 days later, Julian stood inside the glittering halls of the Starless, one of the most advanced and mysterious ships in the galaxy. It was like walking through a dream. The walls shimmered with soft colors. There was no sound of footsteps, just a quiet hum in the air, like a song being sung by the ship itself. He held Ellie's hand tightly. She was wearing her favorite jumper with tiny moons printed on it. She looked around wide-eyed but calm. A tall alien in silver robes approached. Her eyes glowed a faint purple. I am Lishan, Royal Aide, she said, bowing slightly. You are the human? The psychologist? Julian nodded. Yes, this is Ellie. She goes where I go. Lishan glanced at the child. Not psionic. No, she's human. We don't have psi fields like you do. Interesting, Lishan murmured, as if that explained something very important. Follow me. They entered a chamber filled with blue light. Floating crystals pulsed in midair. At the center of the room stood a tall, graceful figure, dressed in flowing robes of deep emerald. Her skin shimmered like pearls. Her hair moved as if underwater. Queen Erlani of the Kaetheran matriarchy. Beside her floated a bassinet made of crystal vines. Inside, an infant wailed, not just loud, but with a sound that went straight into Julian's chest. It wasn't pain. It wasn't fear. It was something ... deeper. Julian winced. That's not just crying, that's radiating emotion. Erlani turned to face him. Her voice was calm, but her eyes looked tired. You feel it good, then you understand why our court has been in chaos for 11 days. Julian stepped forward. You called me to help her? The queen nodded. We have tried healers, machines, even psychankers. None can soothe her. She is my daughter. The next heir. Her pain affects everyone. Even the elders are breaking down. Julian looked at the child again. The baby was tiny, but the energy around her was huge waves of sadness, confusion, longing. It's like the thoughts of 1,000 people all coming from one tiny mind. She's overstimulated, Julian said softly. She's not in pain. She's overwhelmed. She's feeling everything, but doesn't know what to do with it. That is your expert opinion? Erlani asked, eyes sharp. No, Julian said. That's my dad's opinion. The queen was silent. Then she said the last thing Julian expected to hear. Stop my baby from crying, and I will marry you. Julian stared at her. Wait, ... What? I am not joking, Erlani said. You are human, yet you feel her. You have brought your child proof that you understand nurturing. If you can calm the next empress, then you are worthy to stand at my side. Julian was about to laugh. Then he saw the guards, blades. The dozens of glowing eyes watching him. No one else was laughing. Oh, he said. You're serious. Later, in a private room with toys made of soft crystal and floating cushions, Julian tried to understand what had just happened. Ellie sat on the floor playing with glowing blocks. Lishan stood nearby, watching Julian pace. I don't want to offend. Your queen, Julian said, rubbing his temple, but isn't that a bit fast? Lishan raised an eyebrow. Among our people, bonds are formed through resonance. Emotional compatibility. Shared purpose, not time. Still, Julian said, asking someone to marry you for babysitting is pretty extreme. She didn't say babysit. She said stop the crying. a task no one else has managed. Julian sighed. I just want to help the baby. That's it. Then start there, LeSean said. You have permission to bring your child? You full access. The next day, Julian returned to the royal nursery. This time, he brought a blanket, a rattle, Ellie's favorite stuffed lion. Kelleran was still crying, but now it was softer, worn out, tired, but unable to stop. Julian sat on the floor. Hey there, little one, he said gently. I'm Julian, this is Ellie. Ellie walked over to the bassinet and looked inside. Then, without hesitation, she held out her lion. The alien baby blinked, eyes glowing faintly. The crying paused just for a second. Ellie giggled. Julian smiled. That's it. Connection. He reached into the bassinet slowly, letting Kelleran see his hands. He gently placed the lion beside her. Then he pulled out a little device-in-earth music cube and played a soft lullaby. At first nothing happened. Then the baby's eyes closed. Her breathing slowed. For the first time in 11 days. Princess Kelleran stopped crying. Queen Erlani entered minutes later and froze. The room was silent. Her daughter slept peacefully beside a stuffed lion. Julian was holding Ellie in his lap, softly humming the same lullaby. I did nothing special, Julian said. Just gave her what I give Ellie: calm, rhythm, safety. The queen stepped forward, her expression unreadable. She stopped crying, she said softly. Julian nodded. Yes, then the offer stands, she said. You have proven your worth. Julian opened his mouth, then closed it. He didn't know what to say. Behind him, Ellie pointed at the baby and whispered, sleepy alien. Queen Erlani smiled, and across the galaxy the news began to spread. Human calms royal heir Earth's dad wins queen's proposal. Alien throne may be claimed by kindness. Julian Mercer's life had changed forever, and he wasn't sure what came next. But one thing was clear. In a galaxy full of technology, power, and politics, it was basic human empathy that had saved the day. Julian Mercer had calmed the baby. He hadn't used any machines. No mind links. No alien tricks. He had just sat on the floor, played a lullaby, and let his daughter offer a toy. Now he was the most talked about man in the galaxy, and he had a marriage. Proposal from an alien queen. Back in his temporary room on the Starless, Julian sat at a round table, staring at a cup of something purple and steaming. He still hadn't dared to drink it. Ellie was napping nearby on a floating cushion. She had adjusted to life on the ship better than he had. Maybe that was because to her this was all just one big PLAYDAT. His mind, though, was spinning. They really expect me to marry her. The door chimed. LeSean entered, wearing silver robes and holding a scroll-like tablet. The queen has requested your presence in the nursery again, she said. The child is calm, but only around you. Julian stood up slowly. Sure. I'm happy to help. But this whole marriage thing, it is not a joke, LeSean said, her eyes calm. Among our people, emotional resonance is the highest match. The child responded to your presence. That makes you ... compatible. Oh, Julian raised his eyebrows. I didn't resonate. I played music and gave her a toy lion. That is resonance, LeSean replied. He had no answer for that. Back in the nursery, Kelleran was quietly watching holographic butterflies above her bassinet. She still held the small stuffed lion Ellie had given her. Julian sat beside the bassinet. Ellie, freshly awake, wandered over and waved. Hi, baby. Kelleran blinked, then let out a soft chirp. It wasn't a cry. More like a question. She remembers her, Julian said, smiling. Ellie held out a round teething ring. You want to chew this? The alien baby grabbed it instantly, stuffed it in her mouth, and squealed happily. Julian couldn't help but laugh. Universal baby behavior? Queen entered quietly. She didn't speak right away. Instead, she watched the two children interacting, one human, one alien, yet somehow understanding each other without words. She has not cried for 2 cycles, the queen said. That's good, Julian said. No, not. It's historic, Erlani said. She has never slept 2 hours in a row before. Now she sleeps 5. She eats calmly. She is changing. Julian nodded. Maybe she just needed less power and more patience. The Queen studied him. You did not use any tools. I used parenting. Over the next 2 days, Julian became part of a strange routine. Each morning, he would be called to the nursery, and Ellie would spend time with the baby playing, reading, sometimes just sitting quietly while soft music played, and every day. The Queen joined them for a few minutes longer. At first, she only observed, then she began to ask questions. Why? Do you sing to your child when she sleeps? 'Cause it helps her feel safe? Why do you let her fall and get up on her own? Because she learns strength that way. Why do you smile when she does something wrong? I don't smile at the wrong. Smile at the learning. These answers seemed to confuse and impress her. I was taught to shape emotion with control, she said one afternoon. Julian smiled. I was taught to shape it with love. The Queen fell silent for a long moment. Then she said quietly, love is not taught in our schools. Shh. Julian looked at her. Maybe it should be. Outside the nursery, the galaxy was buzzing. News networks across planets and star stations were running endless stories. Human dad heals heir's mind. Alien Queen's proposal still unanswered. Can Earth handle royal marriage? Julian was invited to interviews, forums, galactic panels. He declined them all. He wasn't interested in fame. He just wanted to help the baby. But pressure was building. Leaders from Earth sent messages urging him to handle the situation diplomatically. Some feared accepting the proposal would tie Earth into alien politics. Others feared rejecting. It would cause offense. Julian didn't care about politics. He cared about 2 things: Ellie, and the baby who was finally learning peace. One evening, Queen Erlani invited Julian to dinner. The room was quiet and dark, with a table that glowed gently from within.
Ow.
Soft lights floated above them. Strange fruit and glowing drinks were placed in crystal bowls. Ellie was nearby, asleep in a nest-like couch of vines and cushions. A nanny drone watched her gently. The Queen poured a drink. It is fruit water from my homeworld, she said, safe for humans. Julian took a sip. It tasted like honey and mint. I've been thinking, he said after a pause. You don't really want a husband. You want a connection, someone who can help your child grow. The Queen tilted her head. And if I want both? Julian didn't know what to say, so he told the truth. I'm not afraid of you. World, but I have a daughter. She comes first, always. Erlani nodded. You would not leave Earth? I would only leave if she could have a better life. Do you think life here is better? Julian looked around. The ship was beautiful. Technology was beyond anything on Earth. But it was cold, controlled, ordered. And yet, in the nursery, in those quiet moments with 2 giggling babies, there was something warm growing. I don't know yet, said. That answer seemed to please her. The next morning, something strange happened. Julian entered the nursery and found it empty. No baby, no Queen, no aides. Then Lashawn appeared, breathless. There is a problem, she said. Julian stood quickly. What happened? There was a diplomatic event. Another royal family visited. Their child cried. Kelleran heard it. The feedback triggered a wave. Julian's heart jumped. She okay? She's crying again, loudly, worse than before. Take me to her. They reached the emergency chamber. Kelleran floated in a sealed pod. Her cries shook the walls. Psychic waves made the air shimmer. Julian couldn't even hear properly. Everything was echoing with raw emotion. The Queen stood nearby, her face pale, full of worry. She is spiraling, Erlani said. The waves are too strong. I need to go in, Julian said. No, the Queen said quickly. Too dangerous. You are not shielded. She knows me. I have something she needs. Julian lifted Ellie into his arms. She was sleepy, but calm. We go in together. Inside the chamber, the crying hit like a storm. Julian held Ellie close and stepped forward. The baby in the pod thrashed, her mind flooded with fear and confusion. Julian reached the pod, placed his hand on it, and spoke gently. "Kelleroon, you're not alone." Ellie touched the pod and whispered, "No cry." "See okay?" The two children locked eyes. Something passed between them. Silence. A spark of peace. The baby stopped crying. Not all at once, but slowly, gradually, like the tide pulling back. Her eyes blinked. She reached out Julian. Pressed the lion toy to the glass. Kelleron took it and smiled. Later that night, Queen Irlani stood on the observation deck with Julian. She looked out at the stars and said, "Today, you did more than calm my child. You pulled her back from chaos." Julian nodded. "She's stronger than people think." "She is," Irlani said, "because she has felt your love." Julian turned to face her. "I haven't given you my answer yet." "No," the Queen said, "but I now understand something." "What's that?" "Love is not control. Love is surrender. And you have taught me how to surrender." Julian didn't speak. The silence between them was soft, comfortable. Then the Queen added, "You do not need to give me your answer today. But know this, Julian Mercer of Earth, ... The throne is not just mine. It is hers. And she wants you to be part of it." Looked back at the stars, and somewhere deep inside, the idea of saying yes didn't feel so strange anymore. Julian Mercer had never imagined his quiet life as a single father would bring him to the stars. Now, he stood on the Starless, inside the royal ship of the Catharan Empire. After calming the royal baby princess, Kelleran with nothing more than kindness, music, and a toy lion, the Queen, Irlani, had offered him something unbelievable: marriage, not for politics, not for power, but because her child had connected with him in a way no other being could. Julian wasn't sure what to feel. Back in his quarters, Julian watched Ellie play with floating cubes. She giggled every time they lit up and changed shape. "Look, Daddy," she said, clapping. "Magic." Julian smiled, but his mind was far away. He looked at a small data pad on the table. Messages were piling up. Some from Earth's governments, some from media, and one from his sister back home. "Are you seriously marrying an alien queen? Is this real?" He sighed. "It's complicated," he muttered. Lai Shen, the Queen's aide, arrived at the door with a polite knock. "She would like to see you," she said. "It is important." Julian looked at Ellie. "She comes too," he said firmly. Lisha nodded. "Of course." The meeting room was not like the nursery. It was colder, filled with sharp angles and glowing panels. Advisors stood on either side. Of the Queen's throne, Irlani sat tall, dressed in deep violet robes. Her crown floated above her head, spinning slowly. Julian stepped forward, Ellie on his hip. The Queen nodded once. "Julian Mercer, the Empire faces a choice, and so do you." He raised an eyebrow. "What kind of choice?" "A formal bond with you would change the line of royal heritage. Many traditions would be questioned. Many alliances would be shaken." Julian nodded slowly, "I figured." "But," she continued, "the people have seen what you did. They have seen Kelleron's smile. They have seen her sleep." An advisor stepped forward. His skin was gray with hints of blue, and his voice was careful. "Some wish to test you, human. They wonder if this ... connection is real, or if it was luck." Julian frowned. "I don't perform for approval." "No one asks you to perform," the Queen said quickly. "But there is a ritual, an old one, a journey of understanding. If you take it, it may help them." "See, what kind of journey?" Julian asked. "A test of heart," she said. "Not violence, not pain. A path of emotion." Ju and Ellie both. Julian looked at his daughter. She smiled and waved at the Queen. Then he looked back. "We'll do it." The next day they arrived at a small moon covered in soft pink forests and glowing lakes. It was called Lyrian, known as the Heart Place, by the K single quotes. The Rands, don't only those seeking truth could walk its paths. Erlani met them at the landing site. "The forest will read you," she said, not with words, but with memory. "It will show you who you are and who you might become." Julian was skeptical, but the queen didn't lie. The forest shimmered as they entered. Trees whispered without wind. The ground glowed faintly with each step. Ellie walked ahead, chasing butterflies that flickered like tiny lanterns. Then, something strange happened. The forest bent around them, and the world changed. Suddenly, Julian found himself in a memory. He stood in his old apartment back on Earth. It was the night Ellie was born. He remembered holding her for the first time, scared. Overwhelmed but deeply in love, he turned and saw Irlani beside him. "Watching this is ... personal," he said. She nodded. "The forest shows what matters." Next, the memory changed again. Julian saw himself months later, rocking Ellie to sleep, exhausted, alone. Bills piled on the counter, tears in his eyes. "I wasn't sure I could do it," he said. "But you did," the queen said softly. Then came her memory suddenly. Julian stood in a palace of white glass. He saw Irlani as a young princess alone in a grand hall, learning to control emotion like a weapon. Her mother's voice echoed in her mind. "Weakness is dangerous. Love is weakness." Julian looked at Irlani, standing beside him in the vision. "Is that what you believed?" "I had no choice," she said, "until Kelleron was born." And then he saw it. The moment of birth, the panic, the screaming, the baby's cries that shook the palace, and Irlani, helpless. "Afraid I didn't know how to hold her," she whispered. "I didn't know how to love." Julian reached for her hand. She didn't pull away. The forest showed them many things. Memories of pain, moments of doubt, but also joy, laughter, forgiveness. Ellie danced through each scene without fear. She played with baby Kelleron in a vision of the future, a field filled with flowers, the two of them chasing moonbugs together. Julian and Irlani stood nearby in the memory, watching with quiet smiles. "It's showing us ... what could be," he said. "If we choose it," she replied. By the time they left the forest, 3 days had passed. Julian felt changed, not forced, not controlled, but understood, and he understood her too. Back on the Starless, the court gathered. All eyes were on Julian as he stood beside the queen. Kelleron floated happily in her pod. Holding Ellie's lion and a shiny new rattle, the queen stepped forward. "This human calmed the storm in my child," she said, "but more than that, he brought peace to me." Julian took a deep breath. "I didn't come here looking for a crown or a marriage," he said. "I came to help a baby stop crying." A few aliens chuckled softly. "But in doing that, I found something rare. A connection that crossed worlds. A child that changed everything. And a queen who wasn't afraid to learn love." He turned to face Irlani. "I don't know what the future holds, but if you'll walk it with me, ... I'll say yes." The court gasped. Lene smiled. She reached out and took his hand. "Kelleron's first." "Words," the queen said softly, "will not be in power or in law. They will be in love." And with that, the galaxy changed. Julian Mercer had never stood on a balcony made of stardust before, but here he was, standing beside Queen Irlani, holding his daughter Ellie in one arm, waving to an alien crowd with the other. Below him, hundreds of Catharan citizens floated on crystal platforms, cheering in soft harmony tones that vibrated through the air. Lights danced in the sky above them like ribbons. This wasn't Earth, but somehow it felt like home. The queen turned toward him. Her smile was small but real. "The people accept you." Julian smiled back, still not sure why. "I'm just a dad from New Jersey." "You are more than that," she replied. "You changed the heart of the Empire." Ellie tugged at his sleeve. "Daddy, can we go play with the baby again?" Julian laughed. "Soon, Munchkin. The royal stuff is almost done." Behind them, inside the glowing throne hall, Kelleran sat on her floating cushion, playing with toy blocks that projected small holograms. Her big dark eyes followed Ellie everywhere. The two were becoming fast friends. Later that evening, the family sat together in the royal nursery. The queen no longer wore her crown. Her long silver hair was loose, falling around her shoulders. Julian was in simple clothes now, not the ceremonial robes he hated. Callow single quotes Ren sat between Ellie and Julian, babbling softly and banging toys together. She talks more now, Julian said. She is learning, Erlani replied, watching her child with wonder. From you, from Ellie, from being loved. Julian picked up the little lion Ellie had given Kelleran on their first day aboard the Starless. This lion, he said, might be the real hero. The queen gave a small laugh. Perhaps we should make it part of the royal crest. They both laughed quietly, but the joy didn't last long, because soon a visitor came with news. The royal aide Lycian stepped in, her face serious. There is a problem, she said, from Earth. Julian stood quickly. What kind of problem? She handed him a small data disk. You should see this. Julian placed the disk on the table. A blue light shimmered, and a video played. A human news anchor appeared on screen. Breaking news. Human father Julian Mercer has reportedly agreed to marry the alien queen Irilani of the Cathrin Empire. Many Earth governments are expressing concern over diplomatic entanglements, potential custody rights over the hybrid child, and fears of cultural influence. Julian groaned. Here we go. Ellie looked confused. What's entanglement? Daddy. Something grown-ups make up when they're scared, he said. That night, Julian walked through the silent halls of the Starless. Thinking, he passed floating gardens and quiet study domes. Lights flickered gently overhead. He was starting to feel something he hadn't felt in a long time. Pressure. Not just from Earth, but from himself. He was falling in love with this life. The peace, the connection. But he still missed home. Missed coffee that didn't glow. Missed his mom's Sunday calls. Missed Earth rain. Could he give all that up? Could Ellie? He sat alone in the royal garden, looking up at 3 moons. That's where Erlani found him. You are quiet tonight, she said. Just thinking, Julian replied. I know this is not easy for you. Julian looked at her. I didn't come here to become a prince or a political symbol. I came because a baby needed help, and you gave it, she said gently. But now ... that baby has bonded with you. She cries when you leave. She laughs when you return. She is learning to live, not just survive. I see that, Julian said. But what about Earth? They're freaking out. They think I'm giving you power over humans. I do not want power over humans, she said. I want peace. For both our people. Julian took a deep breath. I need to go back. Just for a little while. The queen looked down, then nodded. Understand? The next day, a sleek Cathrin shuttle took Julian and Ellie back to Earth. They arrived at a quiet landing zone in the Colorado mountains. News drones buzzed overhead, but a protective shield kept him away. Julian stepped out, holding Ellie's hand. His sister Mia ran up and hugged him tight. You're really back, she said, and in one piece. Ellie squealed. Auntie Mia. Inside Mia's cabin, things felt normal again. Wood floors, old couches, the smell of pancakes. But Julian couldn't stop glancing, upspecting floating lights, or whispering. Walzer Earth was still home, but it felt smaller now. That evening, Julian met with Earth representatives. They sat in a sterile room with smooth glass windows. The lead diplomat, an older man named Creighton, spoke first. You understand, Mr. Mercer, that this marriage changes everything. Julian crossed his arms. It's not about politics. But the implications. I helped a child, Julian interrupted. A baby who couldn't sleep, who was in pain. I didn't ask for a throne. I just showed love. A younger woman leaned forward. But will you raise that child as human, ... or as Cathrin? Julian looked them straight in the eye. I'll raise her as both, just like I raise Ellie. with love, with honesty, with kindness, not politics. There was silence. Then Creighton spoke softly. That might be exactly what we need more of. Back at Mia's house, Julian sat with Ellie on the porch. She looked up at the stars. Are we going back to the shiny ship? She asked. Julian kissed her forehead. Do you want to? I like the baby, she said. She shares. Julian smiled. That's important. Ellie leaned her head on his shoulder. Do you love the Queen? Julian thought about it, then nodded. Yes, I think I do. Then we can stay there too, Ellie said simply. And just like that, his heart settled. He knew what he had to do. 2 days later, Starless returned. Julian stepped aboard with Ellie and looked at the Queen. I'm ready, he said. For what? She asked softly. To be part of this? To be her father? To be your partner? Erlani said nothing at first. Then she stepped forward, took his hand, and whispered something no one had ever heard her say before. Thank you, ... for choosing us. A week later, the union ceremony took place on a quiet star station between Earth and the Catharan homeworld. It was simple. No politics. No crowds, just two beings from different worlds holding hands, standing in a garden surrounded by floating lights. Ellie stood beside them in a little glowing dress, holding baby Kelleran's pod like it was a flower basket. The Queen said the words in her language, Julian said his in English, and the universe listened. That night, in their new shared quarters aboard the Starless, Julian sat on the couch with both girls asleep beside him, Melly on his chest, Kelleran in a small nest at his feet. The Queen watched from a nearby chair. This, she said, is what peace feels like. Julian nodded. Yeah, this ... is family. And somewhere in the stars, two worlds began to come closer together because one human dad said yes to love. Julian Mercer had never been more at peace, yet he had never been so busy. Every morning, aboard the Starless, he would wake up to two cheerful voices. Ellie jumping on the bed shouting, Daddy, wake up! And baby Kelleran babbling joyfully from her floating cradle. His days were now filled with lessons, meetings, laughter, and family. He wasn't just a dad anymore. He was now the royal partner of Queen Erlani, and stepfather to the galaxy's most important baby. But more than anything, he was still the same simple man who once rocked his crying daughter to sleep with a lullaby and a stuffed lion. One morning, as Julian helped Ellie brush her teeth with a mint-flavored beam of light, the Queen walked in with a message. We've been invited, she said, to the Unity gathering. Julian raised an eyebrow. That's the big peace summit, right? Where leaders from different species meet and talk? She nodded. It happens only once, every 10 years. For the first time. We are invited together as a family. Julian dried Ellie's face and stood up. I guess we better wear something. Fancy? Erlani smiled. Not too fancy. The children must be comfortable. Thank the stars, Julian said. I hate itchy collars. The Unity gathering took place on a peaceful space station floating near the edge of neutral territory. Dozens of species attended. There were tall beings made of crystal light, small, fur-covered ones, who spoke in musical tones, and some who shimmered like water and glowed from within. As Julian stepped off the shuttle holding Ellie's hand, the entire room grew quiet. Queen Erlani followed, holding baby Kelleran in her arms. It was the first time a Theran royal family had been seen with a humanoid as a prisoner, not as a visitor, but as part of their own bloodline, a symbol of true unity. Later that day, during the main ceremony, Julian was asked to speak. He stood in front of leaders from across the galaxy, his voice steady but humble. I never planned to be here, he said. I'm not a soldier, not a king, not a hero. I'm just a dad. Some delegates shifted in their seats. Julian smiled. But being a dad taught me something powerful. When a child cries, we listen. When they smile, we learn. And when they love, we follow. He looked at Ellie, sitting beside Kelleran on a cushion. Both girls giggling and sharing snacks. They didn't care about species or language or politics. They just cared about kindness. He paused. If they can see each other without fear, then so can we. The hall was silent for a long moment. Then, a quiet applause began from a small group of humans. Then the K single quotes, the Rands. Then others until the room echoed with approval. That night, back on the Starless, Julian sat alone. For a moment on the observation deck, stars glittered outside like diamonds in a dark sea. Irlani joined him, holding 2 cups of warm starberry tea. You spoke well, she said, handing him a cup. I just told the truth, he replied. She sat beside him, the silence between them, calm and full of understanding. This moment, she whispered, was once impossible. Julian looked at her, but now it's real. She nodded. You've given our people something more powerful than treaties. What's that? Hope. A few weeks later, Julian began to notice something new. Not from Kelleron or Ellie, but from Irlana. She seemed more open. She laughed more freely, asked more questions, took walks through the gardens with her shoes off. One evening, Julian asked her directly, You seem different, he said. I looked up from her book and smiled. I feel different. How so? She closed the book. I used to carry the weight of 1,000 years of royal tradition. Now, I carry something lighter. Something warmer, love, he asked. She nodded in freedom. You showed me both. Julian leaned closer. You gave me something? Too? What? A home? The girls were growing fast. Ellie had begun teaching Kelleron simple earth words like cookie, hug, and more. Kelleron, in return, was teaching Ellie how to change the color of certain floating plants with her laughter. Julian watched them one day from the garden and smiled. They're going to grow up without fear, he said to Lishan, the queens. Lishan nodded, and without war, if we are lucky. But not everyone was pleased. One day, a message came from a small group of Catherine nobles. They believed tradition had been broken too far. Humans cannot guide the next ruler, they wrote. A child raised between 2 cultures is a danger. Julian read the letter quietly, then handed it to Irlani. She didn't look angry. She looked calm. We'll invite them to see her, she said. See who? Kelleron and Ellie, together. A special visit was arranged. The skeptical nobles arrived, tall and serious. Their faces were sharp, their robes stiff. Julian welcomed them politely, offering food and tea, but it wasn't words that changed their minds. It was what they saw. They watched as Kelleron reached for Ellie's hand and whispered. Watched as Ellie gently corrected her pronunciation. They watched the 2 girls sing together. Mix of human lullaby and Catherine melody. By the end of the visit, one of the oldest nobles whispered to Julian, Perhaps there is wisdom in this. Chaos. Julian smiled. There's always wisdom in children. Months passed. Peace continued. Ellie turned 6. Kelleron spoke full sentences, half in her mother's language, half in English. And sometimes a mix that only Ellie understood. Julian often thought about the day everything changed. The day he simply calmed a crying baby with a toy lion. How strange, he thought, that something so small could shape the future of 2 worlds. One evening, the Queen made a final announcement to her court. She stood tall, Kelleron in front of her, Julian beside her, Ellie holding both their hands. My child will not rule in the old way, she said. She will lead in a new way with compassion, with understanding, and with the heart of both Catherine and human blood. There were no arguments, only silence. And then, for the first time, the court bowed not only to the Queen, but to Julian. As well, that night in the royal chamber, Julian sat with both girls asleep beside him again. He looked at Ireland. I didn't. What now? He asked softly. She leaned against him. Double quotes now. We build? A future? Yes. Julian looked down at his daughters. One without crying? Irlani chuckled. Let's not dream too big. They laughed quietly, and above them, the stars shone brighter than ever.